Good morning and welcome everybody to my channel. My name is Jakub Vanish and today we're gonna be reviewing the Odyssey. This is a podcast slash, video on my channel. It's probably gonna be quite a bit longer than usual content, but let's take a look into this. So, the Odyssey from Christopher Nolan. I saw it already twice and it's been amazing. First time I saw it in IMAX. We are lucky enough to host a 70 millimeter projector here in Prague, one of four only in Europe, and so it's massive. I had my tickets booked for a year. I already bought it a year ago. My friends and family were thinking I'm crazy, but I knew, this will be something special, and it truly was. And after that, I saw it in, like a laser projection, so standard, 16:9 kind of aspect ratio, and it wasn't too bad. First of all, if people think like you're really missing out huge time, big time, if you're not seeing in 70 millimeter, then I think it's fine to watch it in normal theater. But I would watch it in theater. Like, there was a bootleg on X.com recently, which, I saw bits and pieces of it. Apparently, before they took it down, or Universal took it down, it was seen by 2.3 million people. So that's quite incredible. But I really recommend to watch it while it's out in theaters. If you can see it in 70 millimeters, do so. However, for example, if I look at our IMAX now here in Prague for the next 2 or 3 weeks, basically even the night shows or the morning shows that are at like 9 a.m., they are completely booked, and there maybe you can get one or two tickets, but usually they are in the first row and not in the center, like somewhere on the side. And like, I've been once to the first row in IMAX. I saw Oppenheimer like that, and it was crazy. Like, the how it kind of the dysmorphia of the faces of the people, etc., is just not worth it. And like, for 3 hours to sit like this with your neck, it's really not that great. So like, I would rather recommend to check it out in a normal theater, but you definitely should watch it because it's the movie event of the year. Even though I'm still really looking forward to Dune Part 3, which, by the way, Dune Part 3, there was a prologue in IMAX by Denis Villeneuve. Basically, he added, like, I think it was like 4 minutes or something like that, the start of his movie of Dune Part 3. And it, like, everybody says online, this one thing, that it's like Saving Private Ryan in space, and it really is like that. There was my wife was there with me and some other ladies, and they basically said, this is giving me anxiety. I'm never gonna watch that movie. But I'm really looking forward to it. Again, sci-fi extravaganza, looking really, really great, even though they changed the cinematographer. So, but this video and this podcast is not about Dune Part 3. Hopefully there will be another version about that, because that comes out on December 18th, 2026, so 5 months to go. But let's talk about the Odyssey. So, the Odyssey, much anticipated movie, though I would say a big part of the internet, especially kind of the far right, but like, let's not get into the politics, basically didn't want this movie to succeed. But honestly, they kind of failed, because already now, 2 weeks in, is it 2 weeks already? I think it is, right? No, 2 weekends in, not even 2 weeks, right? So it's like 8 days in, 9 days in. So after 2 weekends, it generated already $700 million in revenue, which is incredible, because the production cost was $250 million. So it already paid it back. And China is still not playing it in its theaters. It is starting, I think, 15 or 16 of August or something like that. And the whole crew, and of course the artists and the actors are actually coming over, to Beijing and to promote this movie. So it's gonna do huge numbers there as well. And the prediction is something like between 1.2 to 1.5 billion, which is incredible. Christopher Nolan can nowadays get really a blank check to any story that he wants, and he has chosen a story that is really one of the oldest stories that we have. It's older than a Bible, right? Like, this is a story that is over 3,000 years old. That's something incredible, from Homer. I haven't read it in a while, but I am gonna read it now. I'm really on, like, I need my Odyssey slash Iliad kind of hit. But so basically, I think it's quite close as an adaptation, but they took some creative changes that are actually, I think, benefiting the movie, because they put together certain scenes in order for us to kind of move the pace of the story a bit further. If Odysseus had to stop in every single stop that he stops in the novel, it would be, or the poem, it would be really, really difficult, to be honest. And also, there were some changes related to how Odysseus is, treating women, and like basically in the book he has kids almost in every every island where he stops, with goddesses, etc. That would feel really weird if he comes back to Anne Hathaway, and suddenly he's like, hey, I cheated on you for 20 years now. So I think these creative changes actually make a lot of sense in here, so I applaud them. So what was the controversy about this movie was mainly the casting choices. So they have Lupita Nyong'o, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, and I'm not making her justice, and Elliot Page, who was known as Ellen Page, so it's a trans person. And it's like people basically claim that this is typical Hollywood, stuff, that they do this type of thing, rainbows and etc. But in the end, having a black person as Helen of Troy doesn't take you, out of the story that much, really, because it's true that, everybody tries to compare this movie to the Troy from, what is it, 2004, with Brad Pitt, etc. True to be told, Brad Pitt being blonde and Helen of Troy being completely blonde, if it would have to be historically accurate, these people would not have existed there in those areas, of Greece and Turkey. They would probably be much closer to this Himesh Patel and even Lupita, to be honest, even though she's quite dark. But so, and also, it's still just an imagining of that story, and even Homer's story is not really historically accurate. There's no evidence that any of this actually really happened, and we're talking about monsters and goddesses and all of these different things. So, it's just a movie, and Christopher Nolan could have picked anybody who he could. And to be honest, I think the drama was overrated, because in the end, basically you have these two actors there for like 3-4 minutes tops out of 3 hours. It's 3 hours long, but it really flies. So that's about that controversy. Now, the length, you cannot really feel this. I think it's really quite fast paced, because there's so much going on. I really enjoyed it. I read online that a lot of people didn't enjoy the first half, or especially the first, like, I think first 30 minutes before you actually even meet Odysseus first. I really enjoyed that. Like, I know there's like longer shots, but they're really establishing everything in this universe, and I really enjoyed it. So like, that's maybe almost one of my favorite parts of the movie. I really enjoyed the beginning. And then, we meet Odysseus, and basically the story is from his point of view, when he is recollecting his memories, from all of these things that were happening for the past 20 years there for him, right? So for 10 years, he's sieging Troy, the city of Troy, and then they make the famous Trojan horse, and then they are coming back home, but it takes him, instead of a couple of weeks, it takes him 10 years. So 20 years he's gone from home. And basically, let's make this a spoiler review. He comes home and he finds a lot of suitors that are, they want the throne, they want his wife, the queen, and they want to become the kings, and they want to kill his son, so because he poses danger to them, and a competition. And he comes back, and he brings vengeance, as we've seen in some of the trailers, and it's really satisfying to watch it, to be honest. True to be told, if you expect really another Troy or another Gladiator or something like that, it's not really like that. It's sandals and swords, of course, but with Christopher Nolan-esque, kind of artistic view. So it's much more dark, much more intimate. Even though, this has probably the biggest, crew of all Christopher Nolan's movies. There's maybe a couple scenes, maybe 1,000 people or something like that. It doesn't feel like it. Like Troy definitely feels bigger in its scope in that way. Here, you're usually focusing on individuals or Odysseus and his crew, and basically majority of the movie it's just one boat, and those boats back then were not really that big. It's, I don't know how many people can be there, 18, 20 maximum or something like that, whereas you're really focusing on the closest to Odysseus, which is like 3-4 people constantly. So what happens is, they're coming back from the Trojan War, and they are taking another route, and honestly Odysseus makes a lot of mistakes. So he's pissing off the gods, and he's defying them, as the postcard says. But in the end, it kind of brings a wrath, on his crew and himself. So he goes, island by island, because they need provisions, they need supply, they need enough food and water, so they can last another, always like 1, 2, 3 weeks, in those boats. And honestly, Matt Damon, I was a little bit afraid that he would not be the strongest to actually pull this off, but he's a great lead. Like, he's captivating. And what he did, he went from like, I think 90 kilos to 70 kilos. So something like, I don't know, from 200 pounds to 160 or 70, I think. But because he needed to be kind of lean and mean, you are looking at somebody who's stranded for 10 years at sea and battling monsters and probably not eating so much. So he's really lean but muscular, but not really buffed or something like that. And I think, that physique looks apart, and he's 55 years old. That's quite incredible feat, to be honest. So they're coming back, and they're coming across these challenges. So whenever they stop by, an island, sometimes there's a village or something like that, and they kind of burn it down, unfortunately, and steal the food. It's not really that nice. Like, they are kind of behaving barbaric. And like, I think the first challenge that they encounter is the Cyclops. They come into a cave, which actually was shot in one island in Greece, in a so-called Zeus cave. So apparently it's a cave that people believe that Zeus was actually born there. So it's a really famous cave, and they really shot these scenes there. And the Cyclops is terrifying, man. Like, this movie downright is horror sometimes. I didn't expect it from Christopher Nolan, and body horror as well, right? It's really uncomfortable to watch. So when Cyclops comes and he starts to eat the crew, etc., he's massive. He's really big. I think 60 feet. So that's something like 20 meters tall. He's towering over them. And he's really menacing, and it's uncomfortable to watch him. And also the sounds and the soundtrack, are really eerie. So honestly, when I was in IMAX or even in the other theater, people are either, covering their eyes, covering their ears, or both, which is basically giving you, a sense of people are here for an experience rather than a movie and a story to watch. They are experiencing the film, and I think it's something that they will not really forget for quite some time. It's really something that stays and sticks with you. So Cyclops was menacing, incredible, opening kind of monster, and I was really shocked, as were the rest of the cinema or the theater. And then they go around, and they come across another island, which is with some also like knights. They look like knights. Of course, that doesn't really fit in, and people are complaining about the armor, but I don't really care. They look cool as hell. And Larastrians or something like that, I think they're called, and they are supposed to be kind of giants that are man-eating, right? Cannibals. And yeah, this is what happens here. Like, they really kick their ass, and actually majority of Odysseus' crew dies there. So there were like 3 boats back then at this moment, but only one survives with Odysseus on it. And I really liked how they shot this, by the way. The same when it comes to Cyclops. So the Cyclops, they had a puppet, really a 60 feet or 20 meters tall puppet with them. Everything was shot basically practically. That's really not a small feat. And here with these Larastrians, these giants, man-eating giants, it was similar. They hired, extras that are basically, the actors are like basketball players that are 7 feet tall, so over 2 meters tall. And Odysseus and his crew, even Matt Damon's role, Odysseus, is played by ladies that are really buffed. They have huge biceps, but they are like 150 centimeters tall, so like 5 feet. So like with these tricks, it's really, they are towering over them, and it looks menacing as hell, to be honest. And then, already the crew starts to kind of not like Odysseus that much, because all of his decisions, lead to their demise. So they go to another island, or I think they stick on this one island. They just go from another side, and there's like a cottage on the hill. They see some smoke, and the crew says, "No, Odysseus, you stay here. We don't want you because you're bad luck." And they come up there, and they meet Circe. Circe, I think it's called in Czech, and she's kind of a witch or demigod, and it's crazy. There are again these eerie shots of a lot of weird exotic animals when they're climbing up the hill, and when they meet her, she's like really lovely, and she's like, "Oh, we do want some food," and she cooks for them a stew with seafood, like with tentacles, etc. And they start to eat it, but they really devour it. It's like they are possessed, and I think they shot this with like in reverse or something like that. So when they're eating it, it looks like, basically the food is jumping into their mouths automatic. It's really weird. It's so eerie to watch. And then she has them possessed, and she turns them into pigs. But the way, again, this is shot, practical shots, they basically take like some plastic, like she basically shapes them. It's a body horror. She shapes their faces into pigs. And it's so horrifying to watch. Even I had to, close one eye the first time that I saw it. The second time, I knew what to expect, so I was watching and embracing it fully. But it is really something else. So yeah, and then Odysseus, comes and saves the crew by basically realizing that other animals might be also family of this witch. So he takes a hostage of like a crane, which is a crow that is a sister of Circe, and she lets them go and turns them back into humans. But it's really, really scary, And then they encounter other things. She tells them to go to Hades, which is like a hell basically for Greek soldiers. So they come there, and again, so well shot. It is shot in Iceland. And it's so dark, and there are all these, dead soldiers. And we meet Sinon. So this is the person that was played by Elliot Page, and he does really a good job there. He basically complains about, he was the weakest soldier, kind of the youngest and weakest, not really adding too much value. So they left him in front of the Trojan horse to tell the Trojans that basically this is a gift to Athena and they should accept it. But they didn't tell him that they're going to be inside the horse. So he was really complaining about it, and I really like the shot. And to be honest, one thing that we need to mention is Agamemnon. There's this King Agamemnon, and he's like Vader, Darth Vader. He's like menacing figure. He's aura farming, as everybody says online. And he's stealing every shot that he's in. And here he is as well, and he explains like what happened to him, because he's so menacing, and he always wears this armor in every shot. And when he comes back, his wife Clymestra, which is the twin sister of Helen of Troy, played again by Lupita. She makes him naked and well rested and very soft, and then basically she kills him because he, and this is also so crazy, he sacrifices his own daughter so he can get a favorable wind, for his war against Troy. So it's really such a cool movie, full of so many details. Like even that scene I really loved. It's really so incredible. And then there are all the soldiers in Hades that Odysseus didn't bury because he didn't have time for it, and they chased them out. And that's when this famous shot of "Let's go" that happened in the trailers, and people are complaining about it. Oh no, this doesn't sound right. This is not the English that we should be hearing in here. It should be proper majestic, British English, not the US English. But this scene explains that basically he was just running away from them. It was not like that he wants people to rush against something and like motivate them. No, he just was escaping his doom and demise. So they left and they found out, how to get to another place. He's told that a lot of his basically whole crew will die. And he will have to choose between Charybdis, which is like this whirlpool in the sea, or Scylla, which is Scylla, which is a sea monster with like 6 heads or something like that, which would kill only 6 men, and Charybdis would kill all of his men. They come there, and it's a little bit awkward scene where he forces them to go to this like suicide completely. And before they come there, actually they encounter sirens, so he puts or asks his men to put wax into their ears, and he himself ties himself to the boat and watches and hears the sirens. And this is probably my favorite shot of the movie. Like, Matt Damon really nailed this. The music is incredible. Ludwig Göransson is really amazing. What they did here, right, is basically, it's like you expect orchestral music, but in this case you're not really getting it. What you're getting instead is they recreated instruments from that era, from Greece, by looking at amphoras and pictures from that time. And we don't have any of these instruments, so they created them from these pictures. And like, it's very intimate soundtrack, but like, for the first time I was like, oh, there's nothing, some tune that would catch, in my head. But for the second time, it was really exactly what this movie needed. As I said, it's an experience. So they go through these sirens, and it's such a beautiful moment. One of the soldiers cannot, resist, and he pulls the wax, and then he goes and swims towards them to his demise. And then they go to Charybdis, and basically the crew says, no, you're not in charge here anymore. We're not going to Charybdis, to this whirlpool. We're gonna go to this narrow path between the rocks. And the ship gets some beating, and they're like celebrating, yeah, we are living, we live, we're alive, this is amazing. And then the Scylla attack happens, and it's incredibly fast. It's like maybe 1 minute, and she really snatches 6 of them. This is a pet peeve that most of the people have about this movie, that Scylla, you had high expectations of a massive monster, sea monster, and a big fight, but in the end it's taking like 1 or 2 minutes, not even that maybe, and you don't see Scylla that much. It's really strange. I don't know what to think about it yet. I really like the scene, but it's true that this is the only part which kind of looks a lot like CG. It's like a more generic CG monster. I saw somewhere online that people were saying, okay, it kind of looks like a hand of God that is, chasing, his man. And then they go to another island, and Odysseus is told that there will be Apollo's cattle, I think, so cows. And his crew will murder one of the cows and eat it, and therefore they would be sacrificed by gods later on, and they will not survive. And he tells them, don't do this. I don't want you to die. But unfortunately, there's nothing else on this island, and they are stuck there for so long. And after like weeks and weeks, they decide to eat the cattle. And obviously, then they got a favorable wind, and they want to go home, and it doesn't take a while, and Poseidon kills them. This is one of the changes from the novel. You don't really see gods apart from Athena in this one, so you don't see Zeus and Poseidon. But yeah, you feel them in the weather and in the sea and in everything. And these are the scenes that are the loudest. The cry of Cyclops and these stormy shots at the sea. They are like they make you feel like you're there, and therefore it's incredibly loud whenever there is a thunder. And yeah, this is what people sometimes complain about. But so everybody dies, and just Odysseus lives, and he is stranded on an island and saved by Calypso, who feeds him lotus leaves or lotus flowers. and they make him forget basically, and they ease his mind, and he actually gets stuck there for 7 years, which is incredible. Calypso is played by, what's her name, Charlize Theron. She's really hot in here. So he doesn't remember his wife or his family. Originally in the novel, he has like 3 kids with her, I think, or something like that, and he's really happy. And he doesn't eat lotus, he just decides to stay there because he's very comfortable. And here, no, he's basically just eating it, and he's happy there for 7 years. When he finds out that he's there for 7 years, he basically builds a raft and goes home after this. And the thing is, people are basically saying that kind of, all of these challenges that Odysseus was fighting were fine. They were sometimes maybe taking him a couple months or weeks. But Calypso, kind of the conformity of being comfortable somewhere on an island and being lazy, is kind of the biggest challenge of modern human, because this is where he got stuck for 7 years and didn't move an inch. So yeah, interesting point. And then he finally makes it home, and this is actually a favorite part of a lot of people, because this is kind of the vengeance, story. So first of all, he goes to, save his son, Telemachus, who is played by Tom Holland. And, that scene is kind of out of place. This is the only one that I didn't really love, to be honest. But okay, I think it was necessary. But there are amazing, parts when basically he doesn't want to be recognized. So he comes dressed as beggar, and he has this long white beard, etc. Looks like Gandalf. And the suitors are there. One of them is called Antinous, and he's played by Robert Pattinson, and he's sleazy as hell. He's incredible, to be honest. I loved him in this role. You really, you love to hate him. You really hate this guy. You want to punch him in the face. And so he comes home, and what is the strongest for me emotionally is when people recognize him. So first of all, there is this dog, Argus, that basically was already 20 years old. And when Odysseus was leaving, he was kind of just a puppy, and he was waiting for his master. So it was a miracle that the dog survived, until that time. And when Odysseus comes home, he greets him, and the dog dies. And it's such an emotional moment. I really teared up, to be honest. And this is when Telemachus realizes that this is his dad. And, the things get really incredible. Then in another point, also, he's recognized by, I think, a lady, that was caring for his wounds when he was attacked by a boar. And that was also very, very strong, because she was cleaning his feet, and she recognized the scars. Such a cool part. And then he's also talking to Penelope, who is played by Anne Hathaway. By the way, great performance by her as well. She's this year in 5 huge blockbuster movies, so kudos to her. And she's also pregnant, so what a year, right, for Anne. But when he's talking to her, this is probably the strongest part of the movie. When he's talking to the suitors, he calls himself Sinon. So this Antinous really, realizes something is off. And, it's really so cool. It kind of reminds me of Hateful Eight by Quentin Tarantino, because all of these shots, the last 45 minutes is basically in this one room. But there's so much happening, and so many emotions and dialogues and fights and everything. I really love this. But then the favorite part of mine, happens when he finally meets Penelope, but she still doesn't recognize him, or at least I think she doesn't recognize him. And he talks about, how he knew Odysseus, and how he was always wearing this Athena kind of pin. And that meant basically to her that, he was always loyal and faithful to her. And, again, it's so emotional. But then he goes about basically a thing that is probably not part of the novel, but something that Nolan added. And I really love this part of the movie and of the story. He recollects about the Trojan War, and how he basically violated this Zeus law and everything that was sacred to these people back then, because he came up with this lie of the Trojan horse, which is a gift to a god, to Athena, to a goddess, which allows them to enter the city. And then basically they ravage the city. They put it on fire. Everything is exploding, and all of this rage that accumulated in people for these 10 years just goes out in that one night. And it's really a slaughter, and they are raping women and killing kids and everything. So it's really terrible. And he realizes this. I don't think that he kills many people in here, but he just watches around him, and he's so shocked by seeing it. And the most shocked he is when he sees that he moves himself into Athena's temple, and there are Athena's statues, etc. And they bring one of the priestesses, like a young girl, and she looks, basically it's Zendaya, played by Zendaya, and they cut her head off in front of him, and then they cut the head off the statue of Athena as well. And this kind of gives him PTSD, and that's why he sees Athena with this face on. Probably, Athena doesn't really have a place in this movie because there are no other gods. It's just in his head. He imagines that Athena talks to him with the face of this priestess that they they killed there. So this was such a strong message, because he talks about how, basically they ended everything, and they talk about this danger of sea people or something like that, people from the sea, that they are like barbaric and they are going island by island and ravaging everything. And you realize that they are actually themselves the sea people. It's not some nation, from somewhere from Africa or from hell or whatever. No, it's actual Greeks, from Ithaca, that are coming home from Trojan War, that are, these beasts and barbarians. It's really crazy. And then, Penelope basically starts a contest. Somebody needs to string a bow of Odysseus, and if they can string it and then shoot through like 12 axes, an arrow through those 12 axes, she will marry that person. And everybody in the house tries this, including Antinous. Oh, I think Antinous says, no, you gave us a lesson. None of us is as good as Odysseus, and we will never be. Please choose one of us. But then this beggar, comes, I want to try. And then, this meme sensation comes from Robert Pattinson. Can somebody get these beggars out of here, or something like that. And it's so funny. But, Matt Damon tries. And for the first time, it looks like, it doesn't work. And, everybody laughs at him. But then he strings it. And then he, pulls for the first time, and there's this sound. It sounds like a guitar or something like that. You can hear it always, multiple times in this movie, this little detail, because he always, kind of plays on that string to warn his prey, to give them a fair chance. And he did this here as well. He strung it to give his prey a fair chance to, to kneel down or escape, even though they closed the doors. And then he shoots the arrow through this, and then the killing starts. He kills everybody basically in the house, but it's not as massive slaughter as in the novel. There he kills literally everybody, even the people that kneel in front of him, and even the women, etc. I think he hangs them. It's crazy in the novel. Here it's a little bit more modern, and I really love the fate of Antinous, who is really so afraid of Odysseus. He doesn't fight him. Like there is this scene where they're dropping weapons from the floor, and he always just he's behind a pillar just shouting, swords, the swords, and the spears, and the shields, and he's just basically shouting to others what to do, but he's so afraid to face Odysseus. And when he dies, you really love to see it finally. And then Odysseus actually finally meets Penelope, and it's a happy ending. It looks like, because there's arrows from his back, etc. So it looks like he's gonna die, but he's not dying. He's basically exiling himself, and he wants to go to the west to honor his men, the fallen men. And this is his punishment, basically, that he was fighting for 20 years to get back home, but only to be exiled, to go somewhere else, and to never see his son Telemachus anymore, who is now becoming the king. But he goes with Penelope, they go together, they're sailing towards the west, towards the sunset, and it's a happy ending basically for them. So, like I said, 3 hours really flew by. I love the soundtrack. I really love this movie. I think it's a culmination of Christopher Nolan's career. I really recommend everyone to watch it. It's a huge sensation. Even my mom and my wife's mom loved it, and they are not really into this kind of movies, definitely not into horror stuff, and this was really, really horrific sometimes and scary, but I think there's something for everyone. You really cheering for him, and it has basically this happy ending, and there's this vengeance, etc. And it's such an experience that like everybody I talked to really enjoyed this. I think maybe for some people it's a little bit intimate, or maybe if you just watched the Troy from 2004 and you expect this to be like a second installment of that, just a sequel to Troy. It's not. You will not see Brad Pitt here and those armors, etc. It's different, but I think it's better, to be honest. So yeah, go out there and watch it. I think this is really the movie of the year. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Did you watch it? Did you watch it multiple times, or are you against it because of the controversies with the casting, etc.? I'm really curious, so let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy this type of content, please follow and subscribe. Otherwise, I see you in the next one. Thank you. My name is Jakub Vaniš, and I wish you an amazing day. Bye bye. Cheers.